Welcome to our Starter Girls podcast. This is our Christmas Eve edition, and you are here with Amy Lafitte
and Jennifer Loehding.
And whether you are starting a project, starting a business, starting a brand, or starting a movement, just like Santa Claus, we are here to talk about it.
I love it.
So I'm super excited that it is Christmas Eve and so many exciting things happening. And I know there's lots of traditions, there's lots of food, there's lots of songs, there's lots of things that are just like so reminiscent of the past. But do you guys have like a really fun a Christmas Eve tradition?
I don't know if we have, I guess, a special tradition. It's not really like, when I was growing up, we had kind of these things that we did where my grandmother, one set of grandparents would come over and we'd do this little church thing on Christmas Eve, and then the next day go see my other grandparents, and it was like this big family fest. I think now we're very simple in our house, but it's nice because we're able to get the kids together, and so this time we're going to have probably, I'm not sure if we're going to have Kara over today or tomorrow, but we will do something today with Paige and Sean, and then hopefully we can round Kara up by the end of the day, but if not, we'll get her around tomorrow. But I'm just excited to get them together and just have the family together to celebrate. And I kind of like the low key. I like not having a crowded, Christmas, we're all obligated, and we just get to hang out and be with the family. And, and I've said this before, my kids have never been, we used to put the presents out under the tree and tell them Santa Claus was coming, and I'd have to knock on their door because they wouldn't even get out of bed to come see the presents. I mean, they would just be like, Santa Claus came? Okay, great, I'll get up at 8 and come in there and get the presents out. When we were little, like 5 in the morning, I had this vision, 5 in the morning, my sister knocking on my parents' door, like we knew Santa was at the, and with those presents at the tree, and we wanted to open, but we couldn't until they would get out of bed. We're like, get out of bed. Hello, Ryan, Jennifer, get out of bed. We're ready to open presents. So my kids have never been that way. So they've just kind of always been low key, and so I'm just kind of looking forward to spending time with them and enjoying the holiday. What about you, Amy?
So we always do like a Christmas Eve service at our church, and it's like my favorite because, you sing carols, and it's like a very quick service.
That's good.
I don't know what it is. It's like people start getting in the sermon, and I'm like, when is this over? And I hate that because it's like, I don't know what's wrong.
It's supposed to be the most important part.
I'm like bored. I'm like, God, this part. But it's so funny. I'm like totally telling on myself. I've never said that to anybody. But yeah, I mean, like sometimes, I guess it depends if you're like really into it or not. But a lot of times, like the Christmas one, I'm like, what are you going to even talk about? Like it's going to be the same thing all over again. So, but this one, it's like really short, and most of it is just singing carols, which I love. And at the very end, they like put down the lights, and they everybody lights a candle, and it's a big church that my parents go to, and so it's like 5,000 candles. I mean, it's crazy. And it's so beautiful, and I have photos of my grandparents who've now passed away, like them holding their candles, and it's like candlelit, and it's just so special. So it's like my favorite thing, and then we all go out to eat afterwards. And but yeah, I think it's the simple things, we turn it into, I've got to get presents for everybody. And one of my friends had posted on Facebook the other day, it was like this car, and she's like trying to shove looks like a bureau into it, and it says like trying to shove my December plans into my December budget or something. And I'm like, that's the problem. I think sometimes we get so carried away with the obligations and things that really don't even matter. And I think a lot of people are even coming to that realization too, and having those conversations like, okay, we're all adults, like let's just draw a name, or after a while, let's not even draw a name, like buy yourself your own gift, like let's just all get together and like eat food and hang out together. And I think that's what it's about.
I'm absolutely okay buying my own gift. That's great.
I think I would be the best gift buyer I could ever have.
So you know exactly what you want, right? Yes. I can always find things for myself.
I agree.
I love it. I think it's great. And I think that's why a lot of times even, as cheesy as it is, you give people money or gift cards, and really, like with my kids, sometimes I just don't know what to get them, and sometimes it's just easier to do that. Then they can go and get absolutely what they want. I always try to, put something in there that is thoughtful, and I think they're going to really, really like. And good thing this year I'm getting, I have a list for at least 2 of them. So I could kind of work off of that, but my oldest is not always easy. I mean, her list was buy me books, and I'm like, you've read everything, so what does that?
Which books, please?
Which ones do I buy for you, because you've read all of them?
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely okay for purchasing your own things. I'm all about it. So I think it's great. But I'm super excited about our guest on here today, because this is basically a special edition that we are dropping out today, and so. We have Mr. Ryan Loehding on here, my other half, and so we're going to be having some really good conversation, I think, here, and hopefully keep it clean and nice and all that good stuff. But I thought what we would do, and Amy and I agreed, we thought this would be fun for our weekly Girl Starter Top 3, that we would pose these questions to Ryan, because this is something that he and I share. We both have been runners, although he is a better runner than I am by far. I will say that I think persistence-wise, I might be able to match him on that one, because I am extremely persistent and have grit and tenacity. But he is an incredible runner, and so I thought these questions would be really fun to pose with him. And so I thought what we would do is talk about our top 3 most memorable races. And Ryan has done many, and so by the time we get done with this podcast, I think the listeners are going to be like, wow, because he has done a lot. I'm used to living with that, and for me it's just part of my life. But when I talk to other people and they hear this, they're just wow.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's kind of like our guest when we were talking to Mary Morgan Holitek about climbing Mount Everest, and I'm like, even though I've never done that, never known anybody that has done that, I can totally understand her mindset, where she's at, and being witness to somebody who does extreme sports like that. So I'm going to start with you, Ryan. What would you say are your top 3 most memorable races that you've ever done?
Oh, wow. There've been, like you say, a lot. So probably I would say the first 100-mile race was certainly memorable. I don't know if you remember, but your grandpa Don Foisey went with me to that one, and
that's right.
He had a little RV, and so we went up there and camped. Wow. At that time, it was the Rocky Raccoon 100.
Yes.
And at that time, that race was still small enough where you could find campsites, and he went up there. He was really very giving.
What year was that?
That was 2003.
Oh my goodness.
So
so we were still in Houston.
We were still in Houston, and I was in great shape at that time. I just come off. In fact, I just a few weeks before that, I'd run the Houston Marathon, which is still my marathon PR. What I ran there was a 2:47. So I was really fit, and got up there and just really enjoyed it. And I know your grandpa was great. He was out there the whole time, and I finished just under 17 hours. So we started it at 6 a.m. and it was 11 o'clock at night when we finally
wow.
packed it up, and or I finished and got done, and it was probably after midnight before we got the RV back to the campsite. But that was certainly one that I remember a lot.
I forgot about that one too.
Oh yeah. Well, and there've been others, like my most recent, obviously, just because it's most recent, is the one that I remember right now, that running at Lake Murray. There was a small race up in Oklahoma, and that was a good race. But
it was really. How many miles was that?
And that was another 100-mile race, and and that was maybe not my most recent ultra marathon, because I've done one since then, but that was my most recent 100-mile race, and that one was quite memorable because of the way things got pretty tough in the middle of the night, and it really slowed. It was 3 loops, and more than half the time I was out there was on the 3rd loop. And it was really, really tough. It had rained a lot, so we had a lot of mud to deal with, and there was a lot of rocks on the trail and stuff like that. But then it turned out it took a lot longer than I'd expected. I was ready for something, like 20 hours is what I was thinking, and it took over 28 hours.
Wow.
So
that's long.
So yeah, and in the middle of the night too, that was one thing. I'd never had this experience. I've had foggy vision and different weird things, when just your body starts to act funny. And in the middle of the night, I was doing two things. Excuse me. One thing is that I would get too tired to keep running, and I would so I would walk a little bit, and then I would fall asleep while I was walking.
Oh no!
And so I'd wake up and be like off the trail, walking through the brambles and.
Oh no!
So
wow.
that was really annoying. And this was like
that's just annoying.
This was like at 5 a.m. And we'd started at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning. So this is like 5 a.m. on Sunday morning, and then the other thing I had my headlight on, and it was dark, of course. I had a headlight on and I had a flashlight going, and I kept seeing things that were not real. It was basically hallucinating.
Yeah, you start hallucinating.
And so I would see like the rocks. There was a lot of Leica on the rocks, which would glow in my lights, and so I would see those make faces at me and stuff like that.
Oh wow!
I would see some of the I'd run in through the trees and stuff, and I'd see a branch, and I'd see it thinking it was like a Christmas decoration or something like that.
Wow!
I would see a lot of just like I think I remember at one point I saw like a lot of trash, but it was like a Coors Light 12-pack was sitting on the but it had been
Ryan,
opened,
it's
and
right
it was
here.
it was like there's no
waiting for you.
and so and I knew so this was before dawn, and it does get dark, and so I knew if I could just make it till the sun starts coming up, then I'll stop falling asleep, I'll wake up, and everything will be fine. And that was true. I was still slow, but it was just everything kind of turned around, and I got my head right, and I sort of stopped hallucinating. I kept seeing a woman with a blue shirt like off in the distance, but
she had the Doors pants for you.
It was like I've never had that happen before.
Wow.
And I've done these like that one that I did in 2003. I've done at least one every year since then. So it's I've done a lot of these. It just never got to that point before. So and hopefully that won't happen again.
Yeah.
Oh,
although it was looking back on it, it was not such a bad deal. I think just so. But yeah, and I don't know if I could think of a third one. Of all the other races
he's had a lot.
done.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I probably have some memorable ones with you, like when we went to Arkansas. I forgot. I should talk about that one.
Yeah, right.
When we went to Arkansas, I don't even know if we had moved to Dallas yet or not, because I want to say the kids were little. Sean was a baby. Maybe we had just moved.
Yeah.
So we traveled to Arkansas, and most of these races are like in state parks, okay? There's just not a lot of real nice driving through these. So we go to Arkansas, and we're traveling through this, and I'm at a hotel, and he goes to run. I don't know if I can't remember if I dropped him off that morning or if he caught a ride, but I get up, and I go to the McDonald's to feed the kids, and my tire is flat. I'm in another state with an infant, like a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I'm like, I don't even know if we had navigation back then. I don't even know if we worked off like navigation on our phone. I think we did.
I don't think we did.
I think we had it on paper. So I didn't know where a discount tire was. I got these 3 kids, flat tires. So I probably have a lot of scary stories like that were memorable. But I would say my 3 would be, and I'll do mine very quickly, would be Tulsa when we did, and that was when Paige. It was on her 16th birthday. She ran her first marathon, and I ran that one with her. And it was actually the first, ultra that we did, because it was like a little anthem. We ran, so it was 26.2, and then they had this little section where you could run, and I don't even know, was it like half a mile
It's
more?
the center of
I forgot what it
the
is,
center
but-
of the universe or something like that.
Yeah,
or
you just
it's-
basically run up a hill and come down, and it's basically you ran the shortest ultra, and then they give you a coin for it. So we did, like, we both have technically done an ultra race, just a very short ultra race. So that was her 16th birthday. My other one that I would say is most memorable would be one of the Isle de Bois that I ran, because that one was, I want to say we were talking, it was like a 36K, and it was like these loops, but it had rained, and it was so muddy that when we were running, and it's on a trail, we were slipping in the mud. Like it was like up to your knees. You couldn't get through it. It was awful. And I remember just going through that and thinking, if I ever get out of this and can get out of this mud, I mean, that's how messy it was. But it was fun. I love trail running, and so it was fun. And then my other one that I would say that I really like is one that's called El Scorcho. They don't have it anymore. It's down, I want to say, where's it at? Fort Worth at Trinity Park. And you basically, I don't even know how many miles were the loops. I don't remember how many miles they were. They're very short.
I think it was it 5? No,
It's
don't
less.
remember.
It's like not many, but basically you start at nighttime at like, what was it, like 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, and you run all night. Like you just basically run in the middle of the night, and it's like a party. Like people show up with their coolers filled with like beer and Jello shots and stuff. I mean, like it's a party run, but you basically run. Like I did like a 25K, which is what, like 15 miles or something, in the middle of the night. And I just remember this one spot, this giant fan that had like water blowing through it. It was so hot. It was in July.
It was in July.
It's in July.
Oh, that's why I was like,
El Scorcho.
El Scorcho.
Oh, I missed that race. It was fun. It was just a fun. I mean, it was tiring, but you just run in the middle of the night. So a lot of fun.
That does sound fun. Yeah, I have a question for Ryan.
Absolutely.
Since you were talking about that race that you just slogged through, and then finally the sun came up, and then you're done, and now it's the next morning. Like, I'm assuming you don't just drive home. Like, you gotta be pretty dang tired.
He kind of does.
Well, sort of I did, but
What?
But what it was in Ardmore, so that's not very. It's like an hour and a half away.
Okay.
And so what I actually did is I made it into Texas, and I stopped at the rest stop, and I had a cot and a sleeping bag in the minivan, and it was like a makeshift RV, and I just took a nap it was like the middle of the day by then.
Yeah,
of course.
right, of course.
Right.
But I took a little nap, and I was fine driving home. I've done it other times.
You have to take a nap though. Like, I can't. I mean, I used to run cross country in high school, and we would run 2 miles, and I would come home, and I'd have to take a nap because you're running as hard as you can for 2 miles. You know, it's just
absolutely
crazy.
Yeah, he does. He keeps a cot back there. In fact, we were, I was in there the other day, and I noticed it was back there, and there's a sleeping bag in there, so like he could just live in it. He just needs a refrigerator in it. He could totally live in his van.
You're gonna be a van guy.
Yeah. So I want to ask these questions, and I kind of know and I don't know these questions, but I think it's funny so our listeners can hear this. Okay, so Ryan, morning or night person?
I would say morning, definitely. I would say morning.
And I have to ask
I'd
this
say,
question.
yeah.
I just think this is so funny. Cat or dog person?
Well, I could probably do it neither, but I'd probably go with dog.
Yeah, it doesn't work in our house when Jennifer's all about saving the planet, one dog and cat at
It's
a
like
time.
we have too many dogs and too many cats.
Yeah, right.
And other random pets too.
We do. We've got a lot of random. We've got a lot of random pets over the years: snakes, turtles, and I would say that most of those would be my kids, the exotic pets. For my kids. So,
of course.
What is your favorite food?
I probably, I would probably say steak. I think is probably my favorite. Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that.
Especially if it's very rare and. Yeah, prime beef is pretty good.
All right, so yeah. I want to ask you this question, then we'll kind of pick up on here. But so our listeners know, because I didn't, like I mentioned, who Ryan is, but Ryan, tell them real quick, because obviously we're going to be talking about running here, because he is an extreme athlete, and that's what we want to dig into is the mindset and all of that. But so our listeners know, because they don't know what you do. So tell us what you do. Like, what is your career? What do you do? Because you don't run all day for money. So you have to have something else that is a career. So tell our listeners what you do.
Yeah. So, well, my background is in engineering, but what I really do is it's sort of between sales and engineering, where I'm not a real salesman and I'm not a real engineer. But I do a little bit of both, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And I've got a little bit of they give me a little bit of managerial responsibility, which has been a lot of fun. So I think that's, what do I do?
Right.
Mostly I work in an office.
He's going to say. He's going to say, I sit at a desk and I work in an office.
That's
I'm like, well, people ask him
yeah.
what he does. He says, I sit at a desk and I work in an office. I'm like, no. They want to know, like, what is your degree? Like, what do you do? And so I basically have to come back and say, he's engineering. Okay, what kind of engineering? Chemical engineering is his trade.
Yeah.
So that's what he does. But I had to bring that up because, like, people want to know, who are these extreme athletes? Like, who are these people that do these kinds of, like, whatever you want to call it, adrenaline rush activities, risk activities, whatever they are, like, who are these people, that are doing this kind of stuff? So
yeah,
I think that one right there would be
this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about an experience in your childhood that kind of impacted who you have become today.
Probably my childhood and I'd say in my teenage years, I was in a real bad car wreck when I was about 15, and that really kind of shifted that gave me a different mindset, a different outlook, I suppose. It changed a lot of perspective. Not necessarily always necessarily good, but it sort of became, certainly made me who I am, with that, so it was, I grew up in Montana, and I woke up in Billings, Montana, in a hospital, and didn't know how I got there, and
wow.
That was, it was pretty rough, and God bless me, I've got great parents, and they took, they did. I know it was really hard for them, dealing with that, but I came out of it, and I didn't play football my junior year in high school, but then I was able to compete in wrestling and got my strength back, and I felt pretty good, so with all the things, that was probably the one thing that really shifted my whole persona, I suppose. So yeah.
Because you went from like a football person to kind of nothing for a while. Well, what was the big shift?
I think it was more of I was maybe a little bit more reckless, and this was in the late '80s, right? So
sure.
When this happened, and there it was a lot of teenagers were partying and stuff like that, which I don't think they do that as much now as we did when we were kids, but so that's probably a better thing, but yeah, it was something that it did sort of slowed me down and gave me a little bit different focus, I suppose, and different appreciation for things, and you realize, and maybe it took a while for it to settle in, when you realize that life can be gone really quickly, so, and you just don't know. I mean, there would have been it would have been one of those things where I could have easily not woke up in the hospital in Billings,
it could have been done.
So and those kind of things, when you realize how short life is to start with, and then if you do something that maybe is not in in line with extending it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so
that's really good.
Yeah.
So my question, I guess, because the listeners on here they know that you've done running and you've done some 100-milers because you've talked about that. So I think what I would like for you to share is how this all came about, because what I know, on my end of it is that you started running in 1999. That was about the time that I kind of branched out and became an entrepreneur. So we kind of had these shifts at the same time. But for these, people that are listening to this, some of our listeners are going to be athletes, but some of them are going to be everyday people. And when they hear this stuff, they're going, how do you go from being a wrestler to all of a sudden you're at 100 miles? And think about this, like, when did you run your first 100-mile race? Was it the first one in 2003?
2003.
Okay,
yeah,
he started running in 99. So tell our listeners
Yeah.
kind of how this came about. Like, how did this develop? Like, what made you want to start running? And then how did you progress into this?
Yeah, so this is, back in the late 90s, I suppose. Well, and Kara was born in 96, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I become a young dad. And I'm 24 years old. I've got a wife and a kid, and I realize that I'm going to have to do something. Otherwise, I don't even think dad bod was a word back then, but I was...
You were learning about it, though?
I don't think I was...
even close to the dad bod.
Right?
I was so... But I knew that if I didn't do something, if I just went through my life and just went, straight to work and whatever, and came home and didn't do something, that would become me,
Oh,
so then and this is a little bit of vanity, right? So but at the time too, and we were really strapped for some cash. I mean, we didn't have a lot then, and then taking on another with another baby, a baby, and so basically what I'm saying is running was about the only thing I could really afford to do. And I couldn't afford a gym membership at the time,
Right, sure.
but I could get a pair of running shoes, right? And that's really all you need, right? So, and I just started running one day. Well, then it was actually later on. Maybe I'd been running a year or 6 months. I don't remember exactly how long I'd been running, but not very far. I'd run like a mile or two, maybe. So just, and mostly just to keep the dad bod away. Even though I didn't know what that was at the time.
Right.
The dad bod. This is the first I'm hearing of this.
I'm totally cracking up about it.
That's cracking me up. Yeah, it's the first I've heard this.
And so this was, before we had, internet was not what it is today, right? So I heard on the radio that there was going to be this Conoco rodeo run, and this was in 1998, and so it was a 10K. So I look at, a 10K is 6 miles. I'm thinking, I could do that. So I look it up somehow. I can't remember how I found more information on it, but there was the packet pickup at Kroger, and went and I probably spent like $25 or something to get my packet, and went to this race, and it was a point-to-point race. I think they still do this race actually, but that was on the race ended up being on Valentine's Day in 1998, and that was my first road run, my first 10K, and I had a lot of fun. And then I think Jennifer started running some 10Ks maybe that year or maybe the next year. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we went to. I know it was probably in '99 is when you started doing some 10Ks where we did like the Bio-City Classic and some of those other ones.
Yeah, those didn't come up in my memories because.
We had
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had. Well, there were a lot of. It was different down in Houston too,
Yeah.
because we were living in Sugarland at the time, and
Right.
and so there were a lot of good races down there though. It's pretty good. It's good running community down there. I really like the running community in Dallas as well. I think there's a lot of runners here that are very talented, and
Right.
And a lot of great runners. But yeah, Houston is where we started, and that was.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I was kind of commenting on that I didn't remember that, because back in that day when he was running, I was actually teaching aerobics at that time, and so my running, this is how it would go. I would show up for a 5K or 10K and had not even run. Like, I had taught aerobics that week, like I was doing like crazy classes, a number of classes. I'd go run this 5K or 10K and hadn't even really practiced, and then like the next day I couldn't walk. I remember running those runs back then, but I had forgotten about them because that really, at that time, I wasn't really actively running. I was doing more of it. I would go as kind of just, oh, I'm going to go run this 5K, see if I can do it.
That's right. Yeah, because I remember you would do sometimes just crazy, like 2 or 3 classes a day. It was...
Yeah. We're like looking at our deal here and just realize we got to make it like a little correction here.
I know.
I'm not sure how we'll do that, but I think we can. We'll fix it.
You can probably right click it. Maybe we can just
forecast.
Yeah,
we might have to. Right.
It's so funny.
Sometimes that happens. Yeah, sometimes that happens. It's all right.
So let me ask you this question. So when you are going after a goal, like you've got a race goal or I don't know, a time goal, whatever that would look like for your sport. What is like your experience, your thought process, your schedule? What does it look like for you?
Now I think it's changed a lot over the years, and early on I would have myself do a lot more training, and probably because it's probably why I was faster when I was younger. I mean, obviously you get older, you slow down, but I, when I'm really honest with myself and look at it, I realize I was training more seriously then too. So, when I first went into, especially even my first marathon, which was it was in '99, and I had a training plan that came out, and the Houston Chronicle would print it every Thursday, and I would cut it out every week, and that would be my week. And if it said whatever it said to do, that's what I did.
Wow.
And I was just right on it. And now it's more like, I'll get up I got up a little earlier today, so I'll run another mile or two. And that's kind of how it goes now.
Yeah.
But back then it was more. There was a lot more focus, and a lot more, I guess, just more scheduled.
Yeah.
Than now. It's more like whatever I feel like. If I don't feel like running long on a day that I had planned to run long, I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel like running longer, maybe I'll just run longer. Especially if I have time.
Right.
That's the big constraint that we all face, right?
Right,
is
of
time.
Course. I know.
So
I know. I follow a lot of ultra marathoners, and that's the thing. I mean, it's the time schedule of and even the family at some point, they're normally like, "Can you not train so much? Because you could spend your whole weekend just running, or being on a bike or whatever that looks like." So depending on how they're doing it.
Yeah, and that goes no matter what you're doing. I mean, the thing we can't get back is always time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's true. I have a question for you, because especially since you started in your 20s and have been running this whole time, what are some of the things you do to prevent injury?
I think just listening to your body is a big thing. That, and also proper nutrition is really pretty good. That's more important, I guess, as I get older.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the other more important things, but certainly listening to your body, making sure that you sleep, you get the sleep that you need, as often as you can, and realizing that you're not always going to get as much sleep as you need, being okay with that, and being okay to, forgive yourself for not eating correctly, for not sleeping correctly, for not training correctly. I think those are some of the things that can, help reduce the amount of stress that you put on yourself, and when you're going through a lot of difficult, whatever it is. For me, it may happen to be training for something.
Mm-hmm.
So all those little stressors that you can put on yourself,
mm-hmm.
Can make things harder. And I do think there's some point too where your body, if you do put it under too much stress and continuously chronic stress, you will get injured. I don't know anybody who can get around that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a lot of what what you might call self-love.
Yeah.
Just like,
yeah,
take,
it is. Taking the time, right?
And take care of yourself, and be willing to basically forgive yourself if you make a mistake or do something that doesn't really help, just, accept it and move on.
Right.
I don't practice a lot of meditation, but I think that's something that we all probably should do more. For me, just my running in the morning is a bit meditative.
It is, yeah.
Just because
it very
I'm
much is.
Out there by myself, I don't have headphones on. It's dark, and I just kind of let myself go, let my mind go wherever it wants to go, and just watch it. And that's, there's a lot to that. And I might have gone a little deeper than I needed to with that.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. I do want to ask you a question. I want to go back. This is where my brain goes. I want to go back to your racing, your 100-mile racing, because we kind of touched on this. But for our listeners that are listening to this, because they're going to want to know, like, okay, so you've done like how many 100-mile races have you completed at this point?
Yeah, I tried to count. I don't know if because I think 24.
Okay.
I think I finished 24.
Okay, so our listeners are going to want to know. Obviously, there was never a day that you ran 100 miles to get to that. How did you get the 100 mile? Because when you were talking a few minutes ago about, if I don't feel like running today, I don't want to run a long day, I'm not going to run a long day. Like, I'm going to forgive myself. But that's because you have the mindset. You know what you're capable of doing. And so a person that has, like, for instance, like, I know today, let me put it this way. I just got back, I exercise all the time, but I just in the last 2 weeks picked up my shoes and decided I'm going to start running again. And I did my first 5 miles again yesterday, so I'm slowly creeping back up on my mileage. The first week that I started that again, because I had been not trained, like, my body was like, oh my goodness, this just sucks. Like, this hurts. Like, it hurts,
Sure.
right? Yesterday I ran the 5 miles. I'm like, man, I feel pretty good. I'm creeping back up on my mileage. But if I decided today that on Saturday I'm going to go do a half marathon, I'll finish that half marathon. Like, I'll do it even if I haven't trained, because my mindset knows I've done it and I can do it. It's all about the head game, right?
Yeah.
So my point being is that somebody who's never done this is going to go, I mean, you can't, how do they even conceive that? Like, how do they get that? So she asked you what that process looks like. I want to know, like, how did you train specifically for that 100-mile race? Like, how did you specifically train for that first one?
Well, for the first one, it was mostly, I'd mentioned I'd come off my fastest marathon before the first 100-mile race. So I had plenty of, I was very fit at the time. So it was mostly getting into just the mental state of being able to do it. Now, at that time, too, I would have done probably a 50-mile race in December, because I think Sunmart was still going then, and I'm pretty sure I did the 2002 50-mile at Sunmart. So I knew what that was like. So, and that's another, I guess, point to the 100-mile running is it does help to have some shorter races leading up to it, just for practice and getting ready. Even though the 100-mile is a lot different, because you do have to pay attention to nutrition while you're running. You have to be a little more careful with your hydration, electrolytes, and things like that, where you can make mistakes on those with shorter races and still get through. But the 100-mile, your body's gonna. If you run out of salt, you're in trouble, right? Or water, or nutrition. But
I agree.
You'll be more highly tuned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But then again, the other thing too, though, a lot of times it's depends on how you look at it, because in a 100-mile race you do have time to fix things. Like if you have a marathon where you make a mistake in a marathon, 5 or 10 minutes on a marathon is a long time.
Sure.
5 or 10 minutes on a 100-mile race is not that big a deal.
Right.
So you do have a little bit more flexibility depending on how you look at it.
Sure.
The other thing I would say about doing the 100-mile race is you don't really run 100 miles at a time, right? It's more like I'm going to run, 5 miles to the next aid station, and then I'll run from there to the next aid station. So you're kind of break it up.
Yeah.
So you're not you're not thinking, oh, I've got 99 miles to go now.
Well, you do. You have 99 miles to go, and
don't sink the red bottles of beer all night.
Yeah, you'll be singing that for a while, right?
And it can always be, especially if about 35 miles in, and you are by then, at least for me, I'm usually physically pretty tired after running 35 miles.
Right.
But you're nowhere near finished, right?
You're like a third of the way.
Exactly.
That mindset.
Exactly. So if you stop and think about it too long, you could realize, you can convince yourself that you can't finish at that point. But so I've been fortunate enough to be able to shut that down.
That's really good.
We know he has tenacity, persistence. What would be the other word, Ryan?
What Angela Duckworth calls grit. Yeah.
Grit.
Yeah.
Grit. And you want him in your car. I always joke about this. I say, if you are going to be in a town where there's not a gas station easily accessible, but it is within 100 miles, you want Ryan in your car with you. Because he will eventually, within probably 24 hours, get to that gas station. You might be hungry, but you'll get rescued.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
You'll get rescued. You will definitely get rescued.
So I have a fun question for you.
Okay.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
I guess it would be just maybe slow down and be patient. Let life be. You don't have to. It's okay to just be. I think it'd be the main thing I would try to focus on. You don't have to always. I think in my younger days, I was always trying to meet other people's expectations, and I think right now I would say, look, those maybe aren't so important. Just it's okay to just be, and then see where that goes, I guess.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's very zen. I can tell. You've been meditating a lot. 100 miles of meditation.
Yes. He's working on being stoic.
I've been studying Stoicism.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that.
It's good stuff, yeah.
I love it.
I do like the Stoics. I can approve of that.
Right? All right, Ryan, if you could be any superhero or character, what would you choose?
I just probably have to go with Superman.
Superman.
I don't really know why, but it just seems like, especially the early Superman before they had kryptonite, because he was the only thing he lacked was limitation at that point, right? And then they had to bring kryptonite in and give him a limitation.
That's good.
But yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I guess Batman's pretty cool too.
Batman is cool
because he's like the smart, scientific kind of.
Yeah.
So it could be like a cross between Superman and Batman.
Something
a hybrid.
Maybe something like that. Yeah.
But a hybrid character. That's funny. Too funny. Well, this has been awesome. Wow, so much fun information. We could sit on here, I think, for a while and pick his brain on a lot of this stuff. So I think that
I had to message you earlier. I'm like, we're running out of time.
I know. We could be here for
but it's so good.
We could be here for a while because I'm sure there's plenty of questions that would go with this, or that we could continue to keep asking about on this. So, are there any other questions that you want to ask him before we start wrapping this up? Anything you can think of?
I've been kind of asking him as I go, but I mean, is there anything specifically that you'd love for our listeners to know that maybe we didn't cover?
Gosh, I guess I can't think of anything right offhand.
Well, I have something. Why don't you tell us a fun fact about you? Something that, something we don't know.
Wow. Something you don't know? Well, you know. You should know. You should know a lot of this stuff. But
yeah, nothing. Right? I don't count.
A fun fact.
A fun fact.
Yeah.
We've learned that you're a grammar Nazi. We know that.
I do.
Grammar Nazi.
I've pretty much given up on teaching the world how to use lie and lay correctly.
Lie and lay. I
Myself,
get those mixed up, and he keeps trying to tell me it's just a math equation. I'm like, I'm
It's
not
simple.
figuring out the formula yet.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so funny.
or you use myself incorrectly. Happens a lot, but I'm working on that, learning to just let it be. You know?
Yeah, that's in my head. I'm like, we don't worry about the grammar, Ryan. I just entertain people and get them excited and motivated. You can write the papers. Like, I don't care about lie and lay. I just don't use those words. I've learned to quit using the words. Like, I just don't use them anymore.
There you go.
Well, and forget about who and whom, right?
Yeah, I don't like
Oh,
those
It's
words
like,
either.
that one's kind of tricky.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very tricky. Mhm.
Yeah. Forget those.
Yeah.
But he might tell you that he's a little bit witty.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes
That dry sense of humor.
Yeah, he's a little
I do have,
bit-
well, you know, and there should be some art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has something that they can contribute. And you know, for me, I guess I can't dance, I can't sing, I can't draw. I think I can write, but I don't write.
Mhm.
So running is really my art right now.
Oh,
I mean,
love that.
that's how I sort of look at things. But
That's
But
beautiful.
yeah.
And he's a good runner at that. He's an exceptional runner. He's had
Yeah.
a lot of accolades and a lot of really cool things over the years. And like I said, it's just been really part of our life. I mean, it's really just what I know. And it's so funny, like I said, when I talk to people and I'm like, yeah, he just ran a 100-mile race last week, and they'll stop and they get this glazed look over because they have to understand that. They got to process. And then the next question is, did he run that like at one time, or was that over days? And
Cumulative?
yeah, and I always have to do, okay, it's kind of like the race car driving that you see on TV. Like, they make pit stops, and then they jump back on the racetrack, and they go. That's what it's like. They make pit stops, and then they jump back
Yeah,
on.
because those guys aren't driving 500 miles without stopping.
Yeah, exactly.
They get new tires and stuff.
Exactly.
Well, and I do want to say, since the whole point of why you started running was so you didn't have the dad bod,
the dad bod.
you're good. Like, I always joke, Jennifer's very modest, and so I'll be talking about Jennifer to other people, and I'm like, she'll start talking about you, and I'm like, oh yeah, and her husband, he's like super shredded. Like, he could be like the anatomy and physiology model for you because you can see all the different muscles. So no dad bod, you're good.
I know. I think that comes from all that wrestling he did way back when. I don't think we have to worry about the dad bod. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. So, Ryan, if our listeners wanted to find you on Facebook, I mean, obviously I can tell them where to go, but is that where you would say if they wanted to follow you or find out anything about your running or?
You know, probably a better place to look would be on Strava.
Okay.
I'm on Strava, and that's open. I don't
worry about
I don't protect that.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, if anybody wants to look at what I'm doing, look at my training specifically. I don't post much on Facebook or Twitter or any of the other social medias, but you know, I do put stuff on. I put all my training on Strava.
Okay.
So if you wanted to see what's going on there.
And for those that don't know, Strava is an app.
Yes.
So
Yes, yeah.
yeah, if they're not a runner, they're like,
It's like
so.
Facebook for
Right.
endurance geeks, I guess. or
And
something
of
like
course,
that.
can they email you if somebody had a question or something?
Yeah,
Would they be able to email you?
Yeah, ryan.loading@gmail.com.
Okay,
is
and we
probably
can-
the best one to.
Okay, and we can put that in the comments section
Yes,
for
because
anybody.
the loading is very German.
Yes,
so
yes.
it's spelling.
You can figure out how to spell that.
Right, then you're good to go from there. So, well, awesome. Well, thank you for being on here. This was a lot of fun, and we wanted to get him on here just to kind of pick his brain a little bit on this running, because I know it's kind of one of those things that people just can't really quite comprehend at that level. It's like we talk about running, and yeah, I'm going to do my half marathons or marathons, but when you start reaping up on those higher numbers, people look at that and go, okay, no. That's just
agree.
hard to bite off. So we want to thank you for being on here. Thank you for sharing.
Yes,
And,
like the Christmas Eve family edition of Starter Girls.
That's right.
The better half to Jennifer. I don't know, you guys are both better halves, so.
Thank you. You're kind. So we want to tell our listeners real quick, if you love our podcast, please give us a rating on iTunes and on our Facebook page. We would truly appreciate you. We can't do this without you. So please do that for us, and then we're going to wrap up with our mantra for today. It's a great day to be brave. You are not getting any younger. You might as well start now. You have the power to change your circumstances any day you decide. Let today be that day. Rise up and be amazing. Be you, do you. All All right, we want to thank you, Ryan, for being on the show. Thank our listeners. You guys have a great week. Merry Christmas. Take care and be kind to one another. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.